The other thing that is also kind of being worked on right now a lot is, you've probably heard the term data observability.
What is it about? So give me the elevator pitch.
Yeah, so for various reasons, data can become incomplete or incorrect, and you need to figure out where, not only that it is happening, but where it's happening. And so, kind of the biggest players in the space are Monte Carlo, who kind of, I believe, coined the category, and Big Eye, and they kind of monitor all your data. If something looks wrong, they're like, "Hey, this looks wrong," and then you can go fix it. Again, what I think is interesting about the previous company I mentioned, Datafold, is that's it prevents you from making mistakes. But there are other reasons why there might be mistakes where you need something that's watching the pipeline. So one potential reason for this might be an engineer upstream of you updates some event column name or something. And so, it wasn't anything you did, but that cascades and breaks a bunch of stuff. You need ways to find out that happened, or maybe there was a bug or an outage or something. And so you need to be able to figure out, hey, something's broken. So I think the combo of those two tools, something that's visibility if anything happens, and then also giving you like kind of foresight. So like every pull request, what you're doing. And then like, well, if other people are doing stuff, I'm going to get alerted. Those two things I think are making analytics engineering, are solving kind of like the two biggest issues that it was having, which was, hey, I'm an analytics engineer, I'm kind of new, this is like a new field, I start making stuff, and I start breaking stuff.
Yeah.
And then like also, the other exciting thing to me is, now that we have these tools like dbt to kind of improve data quality, more stuff is getting built on top of the data, right? So we're hearing more talk about data products instead of just dashboards. And we're hearing about more ML, AI models built directly on top of your data warehouse. And we're hearing about what's commonly called reverse ETL, which is where tools like Census are taking data from your data warehouse and pumping it all the way back into those original sources that we were talking about. And so as those get,
So we broke the acyclic part of DAGs, right?
Well, as more things rely on not only the data but on the DAG, the demand for data quality is going way up, and so that's why we're seeing data observability, and again now we're also seeing proactive data quality companies such as Datafold come into the mix.
Yeah, it must be a nightmare, right, for anyone accountable for the quality of the data, because now, yes, we democratize access to it, we lowered the technical barriers, but we still need to think through what we're doing and what the impact of what we're doing is going to be on everyone that consumes it. And with that, I mean, it could be people, it could be applications or bots or models. And some of those models might be fairly complicated and not easy to understand. So there's a lot of assumptions, right? When we build a model, there's a lot that we bake in as data scientists into the model, all the assumptions, all that domain knowledge. And someone in the analytics engineering role might not be aware of how even a small change in the data, how even just even a where clause on an SQL statement could exclude some of the data points that should go into the algorithm because they're essential for compensate for things like bias. Right? It's very easy to not see that, because as an analyst you just think, oh, I'm going to just make the data set smaller. Yes, but if you are inadvertently selecting or removing selectively things from the data, you're essentially changing the distribution of the data, which is going to impact the performance of the algorithm. And so it becomes, and that's what I think. I don't know how you see this, but I almost believe like there's no way out here, other than start accepting, mentally, that we are really interconnected in if you are working or consuming data, no matter where you are in the organization, what you do, your choices, your actions will impact others. So we can't really, there's only so much we can abstract away and, boxes we can put around people. We need to be a bit more aware of the many ways we can screw things up and affect people's lives in the end, right? Because in principle, that data set, that model could be used to predict whether someone should have access to a rifle or not in countries where, weapons are regulated. There's a story I shared at the beginning of one of the recent episodes with Jan Ulrich and Manta. They do data lineage. And so we're talking about observability and lineage. And the folks in Australia are familiar with this story where essentially someone that had a history of family violence, got access to a weapon, and there was a tragedy, essentially. The firearm place should not have sold a weapon to that person, but because nobody knew how the data flew into the system and the flag was green, that person was able to buy a weapon. I mean, sometimes, and it could be a weapon, it could be a plane that is taking off and gets a green signal instead of a red one. Now, maybe, you could say that's production stuff. It's typically in the realm of transactional, and so you get the throat to choke is in engineering. There's going to be a dev responsible for that. Yes, that's true, but the principle still holds, right? Like, we need to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a less extreme example, but very common, is like with any marketplace, online marketplace, where they're constantly using machine learning to surface relevant products or remarketing or that sort of thing. A failure in the machine learning model could literally mean you're missing out on a ton of revenue. So that there's not, there's going to be less and less tolerance for data quality incidents as more things get built on the stack. And that's, and full disclosure, I do advise Datafold some, but if you haven't checked out the data diff feature that they have, it does do exactly what you're talking about, which is it sees all the way through the DAG. And so before you ever commit the code, you know exactly what you're impacting all the way through. And then you can just tag people in the PR and say like, hey,
can you check it?
Is this okay that it's affecting your ML model? Which is a conversation that currently like isn't even possible. So the fact that it's helping do that, I think, is actually like a huge innovation for the data quality demands that are going to just keep going up as more stuff gets built on the stack.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried about the pressure that we're putting in onto this analytics engineers, because as data powers more and more strategic decisions, and it's responsible for a chunk of the revenue of the company, and an increasing chunk, those folks become really like the point of failure, if you want to use a negative term, but like a vulnerability for the organization, and they are not necessarily trained to evaluate the impact that data can have on the org. They might not have the domain knowledge to appreciate it. They might be simply cut out from a level of visibility, and perhaps this is more true for vertical organizations than it is for startups and scale-ups. But at some point, we know history is there to teach us that the horizontal model doesn't scale beyond a certain size. At some point, you need to report to someone, just because our brains are limited. We can't really keep track of everything at the same time. And so it's to be expected that people have limited visibility, and when they do, either they have to escalate up. So it becomes like a problem. How do you tackle communication within the organization if your systems don't know what your people know? that becomes a problem. Then we have disagreements and things break even when the tech is right.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, people outside of the data world don't realize how messy data can be. Um, and so when there's any sort of issue, there's unfortunately this typical interaction where um, the person who's looking at the dashboard that was maybe off or broken or something, they lose, I would say, an inordinate amount of trust in the whole data enterprise, which is super frustrating because a lot of the issues are just systemic to working with data. Now, that being said, again, now that more is being built on it, quality demands are going up, and that's why you're seeing data observability becoming a thing, and that's why you'll see proactive data quality interventions become major themes of the stack over the next 2 years, because this is a huge problem. These people need tooling similar to, software engineers have the concept of observability as well. um, when this whole practice of analytics engineering is still sophomoric, or like it still needs to fully mature, and there's some of these toolings just need to get built, and luckily they are getting built, or they already have been built in some cases, and people just don't even know to look for them yet because it's still such a new practice. um, but I have a lot of faith, having talked with a lot of data tooling companies, that the tools are either already exist or are coming, and
Yeah.
it's more just we need to know that we need to look for them, is the big issue.